All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to Strip Club. It is our annual Christmas quilt. Can you tell?
Yes.
Christmas, yay! Beautiful. This is another design by Georgette Dell'Orco. That's my mom. She's super talented. She comes to dinner on Sundays, and every once in a while, she'll give me a new design. She'll have played in EQ, come up with a new design, and she gives it to me on Sunday. If it's decent, she can eat dinner. That's not true. She's very talented, and I will tell you that most of our best-selling patterns are her designs. And I think you can see why. She's got a nice touch, very sophisticated, not too hard, and a great way to use 2.5-inch strips. This quilt is called Stars of Wonder. Now, I know I promised to never name another pattern with the word star in it, but what else do you name this quilt? Especially for a Christmas quilt, right? So next month we'll be coming out with Stars of Light. No, but Stars of Wonder. We'll show you how it comes together. It doesn't have to be Christmas, by the way. You can do it in different fabrics. I give you permission. It's your quilt. You don't have to do it exactly like I'd have, but if you do it our way, you'll see that there are two colors. There's a main color in this quilt. Actually, there's 4 colors. I know you're asking. Okay, there's 4 colors. As far as strips go, there's a main color, red. There's a secondary color in our quilt that's green. And then we also have accent, which is gold, and background. So those are the 4 colors that make up this quilt. In our strip set, if you get one of our strip sets, it will contain the reds and the greens you need to make this quilt. And that's how, in the pattern, it'll show you how many primary colors or how many main colors. That's red. Secondary colors in our quilt is green. So it is one simple block. Do you believe me? Well, I hope you do. I have not yet lied to you. That's pretty much the block. Thanks for coming. You want more? You need to see more? Okay, I'll show you how to do more. Remind me that there's a simple block, one simple block, but there's a variation. And I need to tell you about that at the end. So don't let me forget to tell you about that at the end. Okay, to make this, we start with 2.5-inch strips, and we're going to use a stitch and flip method. We've used this in many of our patterns before. It creates those wonderful diagonal lines that make the points for the stars. If you don't want to, I'm going to have you draw lines on the back of your fabric. If you don't want to draw the lines, you can use the folded corner clipper, which last month I believe I told you was no longer being manufactured, but it's found a new life. Creative Grids, which is one of our favorite lines of rulers, has picked up the folded corner clipper, and now it has a brand new life in the Creative Grid line. So folded, we refer to it as the Fabulous Folded Corner Clipper, and sometimes I forget that it's not officially called Fabulous. We just, Fabulous Folded Corner Clipper, now is going to be available once again with Creative Grid. So you can use that tool instead of drawing the lines. Let me show you what drawing the lines means. So Stars of Wonder. First, you'll follow the pattern instructions to cut out your segments as listed, and then you'll keep them in groupings by like fabrics. The first thing we're going to do is build the smallest section of the quilt, and then we're going to build out from there. So to make the smallest section, I'm going to show you the basics of the stitch and flip technique. First, here I have a background fabric, and I don't know if you can see there's a diagonal line drawn on the back of this. Draw a faint diagonal line with a pencil or with chalk. You don't want to do anything permanent because you don't want it to show through your fabric. On the back of your background fabric, on the square, you draw a diagonal line corner to corner. Then you will place that fabric right sides together with your main color with square. Right sides together, and you'll stitch on that line, and then flip it over, and you'll create a half square triangle block. Half square triangle block just like that. Right? Press. If you know that the edges go all the way flush to the top and to the side to create a square, you can then flip it back over and trim away the excess fabric in the back. You don't need to have 3 layers of fabric. Trim that away about a 1/4 inch from your stitched line. Doesn't have to be perfect. This doesn't have to be a perfect 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so now we've created a square. Next thing we're going to do is take a background square on a segment and place as pictured. The biggest tip I can tell you is follow the pictures. It is very easy to put your square on in a different direction. And I don't want to say it's going to be wrong. It's just going to be a different quilt. So if you like what we're creating here, follow the pictures. The diagonal line in this case goes from here to here, and then you'll stitch. You'll stitch a thread over so that when you flop this over like this, it will eat up a little of the fabric. So you want the edges to go on the right and on the bottom to be flush to create the segment, same segment size you started with. In this case, 2.5 by 4.5 inches. So it flips over to create that point. As soon as you're comfortable that it's a good looking segment, 2.5 by 4.5, you can flip it back over and trim away the excess fabric. That is your basic stitch and flip technique. Once you have that, you will start to create your block. And I will again repeat, pay attention to the pictures. The diagonal points will be the things that mess you up the fastest, but if you get that, everything else comes together fairly easily. So that is the set A. You can see that's the center of the fabric. Main fabric, red. So we're going to work with the red fabric. Now we're going to work with completing set B. Same concept. Again, we are working with red, the main fabric. In our case, it's red. And we will create a background fabric, background square on a print segment like this with a diagonal line pictured like this, stitch, flip over like that, complete another one that looks like this. By the power of television, start with that piece. And once you have these 2 pieces, you can add it onto your quilt. Now we have this piece. All right. And we don't have to worry about these not being quite so pressed yet. All right. You see it growing? All right. Next, we're going to do set C. Set C will look like this. Now we've added another fabric to the other side. So let's take this one off of away from there, take it here so we can see how this fabric starts as a segment and a segment with a diagonal line. This is the same way you would sew binding together. Stitch on that line and now flip it over. And we did the same thing with the gold in the corner. So we've created this piece with 3 different fabrics. The gold is our accent fabric. So we've created that piece, and it's going to go into the section like this. But we're not ready to sew yet because we have to add that secondary color. So now we go to the green. Same concept. Background segment, print segment, diagonal line, stitch, flip, stitch, flip, and where do those go? Those go in the top left. Okay? Almost there. 2 more pieces. It's essentially a piece log cabin. As we grow out, we're adding layers to it. So here we have the 2 more pieces that will finish off that block to create your finished block here. Not going to work? I will pin it to submission. Or I could just, by the magic of television, show you another block. Whoop. Oh, yeah, there's the other block. Okay, let's see it grow because I have these great samples. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn it, turn it, turn it, turn it, turn it, turn it. Study that. Take your pictures. That's beautiful, right there. That's everything you need to know right there. But it's not, is it? It's not everything you need to know. No, because you had to remind me of something. So here's our main block. I'm going to take this block, I'm going to put it in the quilt. And it goes right here. Yep. I am missing the gold in the corner. Okay, so this goes right here. Yeah, that's it. And this is the difference that I wanted to tell you about. In this block, there is no gold in the corner. But when you make the blocks for the center, you add a gold. That gold appears right here. And when 4 of them come together, it makes that diamond in the middle. This is why there are 2 different blocks in this quilt, even though there's really just 1 block. That diamond in the middle fills in this extra space. You don't want it on the edges, because in the corners, it'd be this lost little triangle. And on the edges, it would be this V-shaped gold thing that looks like it doesn't belong. By making the 2 different blocks, you have the edge blocks and you have the center blocks. Your little diamonds in the middle are all contained on the inside of your quilt. Nothing incomplete out to the borders. So that's the only difference. There's really 2 blocks. The only thing is 1 little triangle diamond in the corner. And that diamond is the same thing. It's just a stitch and flip. So you'll be making those as you go. Once you have the arrangement that you like, you will sew your blocks together by rows, and then sew your rows together to make your quilt. Measure your edges. It's really good to piece your borders to the size of your quilt and not just slap on your borders. Although, how many of us just slap on our borders because we're so ready just to be done at that point? Although, if you are working with bias edges, these are not, but if you ever are working with bias edges or a quilt on point, highly recommend you measure in 3 places and get the average length of your quilt before you put on your side borders. And then do the same for the width. That just keeps it straight and square, hanging nicely. We have a border 1 fabric, which is the same as our background in this quilt. We have border 2, tiny little gold. We picked up that accent fabric, and then we have this great Christmas print fabric that we take all the way to the edge. And then what do you think of the binding? We debated binding. Do you like it?
I like it.
Yeah, nice touch of green. I would have gone with red.
No.
Really? I mean, you all just knocked me down right there. All of you. Just no. You needed the contrast of the green. Okay. Elizabeth, if you're watching, you are right. The green was the right touch. And it does pull out some of the green in the borders. So this is our, what's the back?
Yeah.
Well, when we take photographs of our quilts, I want to make sure there's no shadowing, so I say use a light background. Or backing, so we did. Yeah, really shows off the quilting, doesn't it? And I think this, this particular batting is an 80-20 blend, so that it's got some wool in it that also helps show off the quilting. The quilting design is by Quilter's Niche, also my mom. She creates digitized quilting designs, and I think this is double feather or something similar to that. So pretty, pretty, very pretty. This big guy has a baby sister. Do you want to see?
Yes.
This is a queen you see behind me. So this would be what, the princess? So here's your wall hanging option.
Now that one can have gold borders.
This one can have gold. Okay, binding you mean?
Yeah, binding.
Okay, so it is allowed. This one may have gold binding. Oh, did you, more? Okay. Paparazzi's out. Can, did you just ask me to hold it up? The tallest people in the room. Is it good enough? You're funny. Now, the princess, the heir, has a spare. Do you want to see another one? A spare heir. Back is fun, isn't it? Okay, the spare. So the spare is a baby. Now you get a sense of what it might look like in other colors. Yes.
Can you move to your right a little bit, more to the center? There. I just see tops ahead. Whoa.
Is the paparazzi still out? Okay. Step and repeat. Can you see it's cuddle fabric on the back? So it's going to be, it's a soft baby. It's pretty nice, isn't it? I haven't studied it. Is there a difference between the primary color, the main color, and the secondary color in this? There is? It's subtler though, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a moment about the fabrics in our quilt. I love these fabrics. I love the way it's come together. When we went to pull the fabrics, we had 20 different fabrics out on our cutting table. And there were a couple of them that were just glaring. And a few of the girls were like, that's got to go. I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I'm like, it's got to stay. And it's the fabrics. You may pick them up. This one has ladybugs on it.
The one has pin cushions.
This one, you see pin cushions, also pumpkins, big flowers, sort of in a pumpkin feel to it. We have a metallic crosshatch. We have a metallic polka dot. We have some reds that are a little more orange, some that may be a little more burgundy. Yeah, nice texture, and it adds variety. We've had a couple of quilts in the past where they've been red, and they pretty much looked like they were all the same red. They looked great when you put them out, but then you put them in the quilt and it didn't have as much interest. So now we've got some variety, we've got some action, we've got some movement. So fabrics that you may not think work in a scrappy quilt can add enough dynamic texture to the quilt to make it pop. So they actually are needed, even though in the beginning you may not think it goes. I had an old friend used to call it a zinger fabric. You kind of need the zingers in there too. So those are my little tips for picking fabrics. Do we have any questions on Stars of Wonder other than why did I name it another star name? But we've been through that, so that's okay. No questions? Because it really is that easy? All right. Okay, my friends, then yes?
What if you've got the L shapes, they're the same fabrics?
These two are the same fabrics?
But
These two?
yeah.
Yeah.
What if you mix those?
If you mix those, it just becomes scrappy. So the question is, these fabrics are the same. And I don't know if I mentioned that while I was putting it together. You notice there's sets of fabric. These two are the same. These two are the same as each other. These two are the same as each other, and these two are the same as each other. What happens is it creates a real L shape, and it creates consistency in the flower, as if the outer petals are dark red and the inner petals are, if you think of it as a flower. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It just then becomes a much scrappier quilt. But in this quilt, all of those L's are the same. They're all the same set of fabrics. And the way the pattern is written is that's how you can cut it out of strips. If you want to do it scrappy, by all means. If you want to start small, you can. If you don't want to put it together, before you sew your blocks together, you can mix and match and see how you like it. And then see if you like it. If you don't, then go back to the matching L's. Good question. Any other questions? Nothing? Well, if there's no other questions, how about we do this again next month for another pattern that uses 2.5-inch strips.